it with confirmation of the story we've been reporting. But his number 10 shirt has gone to Matheus Cunha for the new season. They also cover Red Bull boss Christian Horner, saying there's a plan for the post-Max Verstappen era. But we will start with the story that features prominently in the Telegraph, who are reporting that the Liverpool squad will travel to Portugal and attend the funeral of their teammate Diogojota. Mark, we heard, or we saw, I suppose, a lot of statements on social media yesterday of those who know Diogojota paying tribute to him. What we saw on Friday, I guess, is the impact it has. You're there for the Club World Cup, Al Hilal playing on Friday evening, and you've seen the likes of Ruben Neves and Joao Cancelo, who played with him. Well, Ruben Neves, both club and country, but Cancelo for country, visibly emotional. This is what it means to two people who obviously knew him incredibly well.
Yeah, and obviously on Saturday we've got Trent Alexander-Arnold, who was very close to Jota playing for Real Madrid, and it's just unspeakable, isn't it? I don't think any of us can find words for what's happened the last 48 hours, and you know, when the Liverpool players meet up tomorrow to fly to Portugal, I mean, they may fly tonight, I'm not sure what the timings are, but it'll be the first time they've seen each other since the end of last season, and they'll all come together earlier than they expected for this absolute tragedy. And, you know, they'll all want to be there. They're a very close-knit squad at Liverpool. And I just want to also say as well, you know, the players have been really hit by this, but also members of staff at the club who were very close to Jota as well. Again, I found it very difficult. It's fans, it's players, it's the ordinary people that worked at Liverpool that saw him as a very normal, very kind of down-to-earth lad, not just a footballer, it's just someone that they would recognise as being normal. So it's hit everybody, and obviously the situation as well with the fact that, you know, that his marriage recently, his young children, it's just an absolute tragedy. He has so much to live for, and the players who all spoke so highly of him have got to gather tomorrow for what's just going to be an awful event in Portugal, really, the funeral of a young player who should be reporting back for pre-season training on Monday, but unfortunately this situation is as it is.
For the player and for the club, Ian, it seems to me that the contrast, which feels so tragic, as just touched on, within the last month, he's won a Premier League title with his club, he's won the Nations League with his country, he's got married, and now all of that is gone within such a short space of time, and that the ecstasy and that joy to change to this so quickly is just so difficult to comprehend.
Yeah, I think one of the things that this story speaks to is the closeness and the bond that that develops between teams of sportsmen and sportswomen. These guys are more than just work colleagues. They work together every day, but they travel together, they eat together, they even room together. On some occasions, they spend time on buses, on planes, in dressing rooms, on training grounds. A lot of the foreign guys spend a lot of time with each other away from the club as well, because obviously they don't have such a wide social circle. So I think we shouldn't underestimate the bond that exists between these guys, and this is the manifestation of that we witness now. We witness real pain, real feelings, real grief, real shock, and what we will see over the days and weeks to come is that it'll also take time for these guys to move on from this. I mean, it's impossibly difficult, because every time Liverpool report for training, as they were supposed to do on Monday, I know that's now been delayed, but every time they turn up for training, as the season starts and goes on, there'll be somebody missing. There'll be a shirt that isn't on the peg, and it's impossible to work out and exactly and imagine how exactly that will feel for them. Football is a very modern sport these days, so these players will get all the help that they need psychologically and emotionally. They'll be given the time. And tomorrow, I guess, is the first step on what will be a really, really long and difficult journey for these players, and as Mark says, other staff members at the club, and for the manager Arne Slot, and of course for supporters. And this will not be a quick process. This will be a slow and very painful and very public process.
Did you find it surprising, Mark, that those Portuguese players did play in that Club World Cup game, because they would be completely within their rights to say, I actually don't want to do this at the moment?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we spoke to Enzo Maresca in Philadelphia last night. And he said, Pedro Neto had missed training yesterday, and he said whether he decides to play against Palmeiras is completely up to him. And I imagine the same thoughts are going through a lot of players' minds right now. Like I mentioned Trent earlier on, he might have the similar feelings playing for Real Madrid on Saturday. How do you kind of deal with it? It's so tough, and I imagine for the players as well. It's that flying to the funeral tomorrow. It's it's an intensely personal matter. This situation, their grief is grief, but I guess it's magnified with the family. But this situation in Portugal on Saturday will be played out in front of the world, really, because he was a world famous footballer, and there'll be no privacy, there'll be no ability to mourn in private. It will be a ceremony that lots of fans will want to see as well, because he was so close to them. I flew back from Munich from the Nations League final a couple of weeks ago into Manchester, and Jota was on my flight, and he was asked by young kids for photographs and autographs, and we all see footballers, and sometimes it can happen a lot, and they don't want to, they don't want to sign an autograph, or they'll feel a bit aggravated by it. He couldn't do enough. He was signing autographs, chatting to people, having pictures taken, seeing such a down-to-earth guy, and that is the person that everyone will be remembering tomorrow, that the players will be saying goodbye to, just a normal guy. And of course, if you're playing this weekend, or even when the season starts, the first game that Liverpool play, it'll be so hard for a lot of players, even 4, 5, 6 weeks down the line. The first Premier League game of the season, some Liverpool players might find it tough, even impossible to play. We don't know how they'll react yet, especially now in the very kind of the hours after it's happened. That who knows what the reactions will be, but it's going to take a long time, like Ian said.
One of those reactions, Ian, is featured very heavily on the back of the Sun, and the words of Mo Salah, who says, "Until yesterday, I never thought there would be something that would frighten me of going back to Liverpool after the break. Teammates come and go, but not like this. It's going to be extremely difficult to accept that Diogo won't be there when we go back." And it feels a little bit churlish thinking about the impact that might have when Liverpool return to playing games, as to whether it might be something that for want of a better word, inspires them, that they want to have success for their teammate in the coming season, or whether for some of them it will just be too much to try and put themselves through and think about concentrating on playing in particularly the early months of the season.
I mean, they will do it because they're professional, and footballers tend to be, the majority, incredibly strong mentally. They will do it. They will find a way to do it. They will almost see it as a duty and obligation to Diogo to do it. So they will do it. But those words from Mo Salah are very, very powerful indeed. And something that struck me when Mark was just talking there was, you've got to remember that these guys are very young. They're young men. I mean, Salah himself is only 33. He's relatively young, and he's one of the older members of that squad. But there'll be players in that squad who will be experiencing this kind of loss and grief for the very first time because of their age, and that will add another layer of difficulty and complexity to it as they try to comprehend it. When Salah talks there about being scared to come back for pre-season training, I can only imagine what he means is that these guys are incredibly fit athletes. Okay, they're incredibly powerful, strong guys in the prime years of their lives, and to a degree, there's a level of invincibility that is felt by sportsmen and women when they're at the peak of their powers because of the incredible physical condition that they get themselves into, and indeed the mental strength that they have that I've already referenced. And this type of event pierces that and can shatter that. So when someone like Salah talks about being scared to come back, I'd imagine that is what he means, because not only will he be in the early stages of mourning the loss of a friend and a teammate, it will also be, I'm sure, on an almost subconscious level, be forcing him to ask questions of his own mortality in many ways, because events like this make us all stop and think and realise how vulnerable every single one of us really is.
And it is so sad as well, Mark, that Liverpool as a club are one that have had to confront tragedy far too many times in a relatively short spell of time. And you think back to Hillsborough, which obviously is a slightly different scenario, but the players and the team had to carry on playing matches after that season. And I think in retrospect, a lot of those involved, certainly Kenny Dalglish is one of them who has spoken about how difficult it was and how much actually it took out of you without realising it at the time, that you're dealing with grief, but also expected to go and do your job in the glare and the scrutiny of so many.
Oh, yeah, you speak to any of the players involved at the team at Hillsborough who went to so many funerals, that I think that the squad represented every funeral. They're still affected by it now, almost 40 years on. And whatever happens at the funeral this weekend, the players will be affected by it forever. There's no doubt about that. And there'll be moments next season and beyond, trigger moments, where the fans will sing Jota's name inevitably at every game, and it will cause flashbacks and moments and sadness and joy and all sorts of emotions which will never go away. This will never ever go away for Liverpool. A player in the prime of his career, the prime of his life, just gone. It's impossible for it to go away. And I can't think of a similar sporting tragedy like this that's affected a player for a long, long time. There have been players that have lost their life. Laurie Cunningham was an example in the early 80s at Real Madrid player. And there have been others at, Antonio Reyes, who played for Arsenal. But, Jota is in the peak of his career, and he was a guy that everyone saw on their screens every week doing stuff that super athletes do. So that's why it's so hard to comprehend. And next season and beyond, the Liverpool players, Andy Robertson's tribute the other day was very heartfelt. They will feel this forever, and it's just not going to go away quickly.
As you would expect, it is something that has brought the football community together. There was a big picture of Diogojota as Oasis begin their comeback tour, a picture of Jota on one of the big screens in Cardiff. Daniel Taylor of The Athletic tweeting that, with Oasis in Cardiff tonight. And it was just before the song Live Forever was played, and I'm sure that funeral will be an incredibly emotional and difficult watch in Portugal on Saturday. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll have a look at some of the other sports stories in the morning's newspapers. The later version of The Telegraph has reached us that they have made Emma Raducanu's Wimbledon exit their lead. We'll look at a valiant effort from the British number one next. And as promised, we'll also take a look at the story surrounding Marcus Rashford and 4 big-name teammates all looking for a way out of Manchester United. Football writer Mark Ogden and the Daily Mail's football editor Ian Ladyman. Let's focus on a story which is across most of the back pages, it has to be said, for Saturday, that Marcus Rashford headlines a group of 5 Manchester United players who have been banished by Ruben Amorim, the head coach, ahead of the new season. He and Jadon Sancho, Alejandro Garnacho, Anthony and Terrell Malacia as well. Ian Ladyman, no great surprise that any of those 5 don't have a significant future at the club. And I guess financially as well, there is a reason for Ruben Amorim to want rid of them, to try and regenerate the squad and continue building his own team.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fascinating story, this, and the reason that I see it as being so is that this feels like a real line in the sand moment for Ruben Amorim, the Manchester United coach, a real stick or twist moment, and he's decided to twist. And what I mean by that is that when you've got players who you don't want and they don't want to be around, it's quite easy to hedge your bets and say, well, I'll keep them in the first team pool and I'll use them off the bench occasionally, and I might use them in the League Cup or whatever. And that way it stops the negative headlines. It prevents that feeling of tension and unrest. And it also gives you a bit of a bigger squad, and it keeps players potentially in the shop window. They might come off the bench and score a goal for you. Amorim has obviously thought, no, that's not the way that I'm going to do this. I think this is a coach who knows that what happens in the first few months of the season will essentially, it'll give him another lease of life, or at United, or will bury him. Because we can't forget the way that last season went. You can't forget where they finished in the league. You can't forget what happened in the Europa League final. If United start badly this season, then that guy is under pressure and probably goes. And so he's obviously thought, if I'm going, then I'm not gonna go wondering. I'm gonna go on my terms. I'm gonna go my way. I'm gonna manage my way. These guys don't want to play for me. They tell me they don't want to play for me. They don't behave as though they want to play for me. So they're not playing for me, and they're not playing for me. No matter how badly I might need them on occasion, no matter how badly I might need a deep squad and a deep bench, they are not playing for me. This is my football club, and I will do it my way. It's brave. I admire him for it, but it also carries an element of risk.
To you, Mark, what would be, do you think, the biggest motivating factor for Amorim to want rid of them? Is it that the players don't fit the system? Is it, as Ian just alluded to, that maybe the attitude is not great for some of them? Or is it that some of them are on a lot of wages and they're costing club a lot of money to do not very much?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a combination of all three things you mentioned there, because all players are different. But I do think that ultimately he doesn't want the distraction of being asked by people like us what's happening with Marcus Rashford. Is he going to go on the summer tour to the United States? Is Jadon Sancho going on the tour? Is he training with the first team? All these questions which kind of, hung over Erik ten Hag last year with Sancho, that he's dealt with that. And I think it is good, strong management. I think United have backed him, but there is a downside to this in the sense that there's 5 players there that United today have just basically cut their value, because everybody that might want to sign these players will know that they are damaged goods, and that United's valuation at 9 o'clock this morning is not the same as at 9 o'clock tonight, because they can't say we want X amount of pounds for Marcus Rashford when they're telling the whole world that he's not part of the plans. So they have a problem there unless they know where these players are going. But I think it also makes it sure as well that in January, I think Marcus Rashford had a couple of options. AC Milan were interested, didn't fancy that. And he basically waited till the end of the window and signed for Aston Villa when it was clear that Barcelona didn't want him. Will Marcus Rashford be prepared to wait as long again when he knows that he's not going to kick a ball again for Man United? It might force the issue, but still I do think that United need to back this up now by getting rid of these players quickly. Otherwise, they'll have a problem in August, late August, when they're still in the books, they're still paying the wages and they can't get rid of them. So they need to move them on fast to prevent it becoming a distraction, which they've done this to avoid it becoming a distraction.
That concept or that challenge, Ian, of moving them on fast again ties in with the finances, doesn't it? That if your option is to go somewhere else, but if you're Jadon Sancho and Marcus Rashford in particular, you might have to take a pay cut. You wonder whether you sit there for as long as possible on your 350 grand a week, or you say to Man United, well, if you want me to go, you can pay the rest of my contract, the differential between whatever my new club's going to offer me and what you're giving me now.
Without a doubt, somebody's going to have to take a backward step in these negotiations, and the chances are that it'll have to be Manchester United. That's usually the way that it works. I'll just take issue slightly with something that Mark just said there about cutting value, and I absolutely know what he means. United are essentially telling the world that these players are wrong-uns, for want of a better phrase. That's the way they obviously see them. But I don't think they will sell them. I'm not sure they can sell them. I think the majority of these will have to be loans again, because there aren't that many clubs out there who can go for a transfer fee for a player like Marcus Rashford, who earns the type of money that he earns, and go for the whole package. He's just not that valuable. So the chances are that some of these departures will once again be loans, and the whole merry-go-round will start again. United are going to find it desperately difficult to sell these players on the basis of the way they've played in the last couple of years, and just from a pure standpoint of pounds and pence, it does not add up.
Do you think, Mark, that there was ever a temptation, particularly with Rashford, who was good on that loan spell with Aston Villa? Sancho was fine with Chelsea too, to give them a second chance? Or do you think that by the time that particularly Rashford left at the end of January, start of February, that his mind was made up on him, that he was never going to play for Manchester United again?
Yeah, there was no way back for those two. I mean, Sancho had a poor season at Chelsea, and he's never done anything at Man United to warrant being given a third, fourth or fifth chance. And Marcus Rashford, did he do that well at Aston Villa? He scored 2 Premier League goals and a couple in the FA Cup against Preston. So, for a player that earns 325 grand a week, you'd expect more than 4 goals in 6 months. So I don't think Rashford did anything at Aston Villa to convince Ruben Amorim that he was wrong. So I think their future was sealed the moment they left Old Trafford, and there's no way back. And I think it's the same for the other 3 players. I think that the time's up. None of them are good enough for Man United in their current form. So move them on.
Part of the story in the Times, Ian, is that number 10 shirt has gone for Marcus Rashford. It's been handed to Matheus Cunha. I guess the flip side of what we've been talking about. How many more players do you think Manchester United are short of being challenges for, say, a Champions League spot next season?
Goodness me, I mean, anybody that you run into down your local will tell you that they need a centre forward, a world-class holding midfield player, a goalkeeper, another centre half, and a wide player.
Good.
And a wide player. Is that enough?
Everything's looking fine then.
Do you want me to go on? And look, Cunha is a fine signing in that he's a fine player. However, at the moment, it does feel a little bit like dropping a goldfish into a pond full of sharks and telling him to swim and make the difference, because one player ain't going to change that team on his own. Okay, so Cunha is a start. He's a start. That's what he is. But he's the first piece in a massive jigsaw puzzle, and there's an awful lot of pieces to put in that puzzle between now and the middle of August.
That's a rousing rallying cry for Manchester United fans to start the new season. That's the reality there.
It is late on a Friday.
Let's finish, Mark, with a bit of Wimbledon and the end of the line for Emma Raducanu, beaten by the top seed Arina Sabalenka, but not before giving an encouraging account of herself.
Absolutely. You know, I mean, at the end of the day, she lost in straight sets, but it was the world number one. She gave it a really good fight, and you know, I was watching this downstairs in the hotel in Philadelphia, and people were stood there watching. It was generating excitement because they thought there was a shock on, and a couple of times it looked like there was. She had a big lead in both sets and didn't hold on to it. But I think it's definitely promising in the sense that she's had her problems over the years. To go so close against the world number one is positive for the future. So it was a good night for Raducanu, apart from the result.
Yeah, just very, very briefly, a big day for the Lionesses, Ian Ladyman, as they start their Euros campaign. What chance of retaining their title?
Well, it's desperately difficult, isn't it? You know, they've not been consistently convincing, really, ever since they thrilled us a few years ago at Wembley. So it's a big challenge for Serena and the Lionesses. If I had to put money on it, I'd say no. It's a very difficult job to win away from home. But I'm sure, there've been some big calls made before the tournament starts. I mean, the Mary Earps thing, I think, is still kind of resonating around the world of women's football to a degree. So we wish them well, but the challenge ahead of them is vast, I would say.
Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. If you missed any of the show, there is always the chance to catch up with Back Pages tonight at hour. And the show is also available as a podcast. Just download Back Pages on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. On the way with us on Sky Sports News, we'll round up all the day's transfer news. A six-time Premier League champion, Kyle Walker, is heading back to the Premier League and newly promoted Burnley.